Thank you, Dr. Kumanyika. It is with great excitement that I assume the presidency of the American Public Health Association. It's with some trepidation, but with a sense of mission and urgency and possibility. Many of you may already know that I aim to take our association and our partners and as many other community folks and national organizations as will join us on a national campaign against racism. Because knowing my work on racism and health, if not me, who? If not now, when? Some of you may not have said the word racism in the past month or two. Some of you may never say the word racism. So I want to be clear for all of our members what I mean when I say the word racism. I am clear that I'm talking about a system. I am not talking about an individual character flaw or a personal moral failing or even a psychiatric illness, as some people have suggested. I am talking about a system of power. And it's a system of doing what? It's a system of structuring opportunity and of assigning value. And on what basis is that opportunity structured? And on what basis is that value assigned? It's based on the social interpretation of how we look, which is what we call race in this country. You know, you look at me here in Chicago, Illinois, and I am clearly black. But if you were to look at me in some parts of Brazil, I would be just as clearly white. And if you were to look at me in South Africa, I would be clearly colored. And here I am with the same physical appearance. But the social interpretation of my appearance in those three settings would assign me to three different racial groups. And furthermore, if I were to stay in any of those settings long enough, then my health outcome would take on that of the group to which I've been assigned, even though I have the same genes in all three places. So what are the impacts of this system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on so-called race? Racism, when we think about it in this country, which is not frequently enough, but when we do, we understand that racism unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities. But it doesn't take very long to recognize that every unfair disadvantage has its reciprocal unfair advantage, and so racism also unfairly advantages other individuals and communities. But whether we are one of those that's unfairly disadvantaged or unfairly advantaged as an individual, we also need to recognize that racism is sapping the strength of our whole society through the waste of human resources. And that is a huge kind of untold story about the impacts of racism. How we as a nation are not investing fully in the excellent public education of all of our kids, because the blinders of racism make us believe that there are no geniuses in the barrios or in the ghettos or in the reservations. We can get along very well, thank you, without those kids. But of course we know that there's genius in all of our communities, and if we were to only invest in that genius, we could be doing so much better as a nation or even as a world. And many of you may have heard me already say, but I think we would already be up on Mars farming if that were a good idea. If we were to invest in all of our genius. Many other examples about how racism saps the strength of the whole society, how it's made us complacent with the wholesale warehousing disproportionately of so many black and brown men in our prison system, on and on and on. And actually, I encourage us, yes, to call out the unfair disadvantage, and yes, to call out the reciprocal unfair advantage, but if we concentrate even more of our attention to how racism is sapping the strength of the whole society, if we make our media stories about that, our data collection about that, our conversations around the dinner table about how racism is sapping the strength of the whole society, we will have more of us intent on dismantling this system. I only have a few more minutes to share with you an idea of what I want to take us to do. I want to say that as we try to achieve health equity, we need to think about three principles that are going to be necessary to guide our actions. The first of which is we need to think about valuing all individuals and populations equally. The second is recognizing and rectifying historical injustices. And the third is providing resources according to need. And I am actually going to challenge each of us in our sections and affiliates, in our caucuses, in our SPIGs and forums, in all of the components of APHA to operationalize each of these elements, each of these principles that's necessary for achieving health equity. What does it mean to value all individuals and populations equally? It means looking at who's at the table and who's not, what's on the agenda and what's not. What does it mean to recognize and rectify historical injustices? It means that when we're trying to solve a problem, we need to say, how did this problem come to be this way? And we also need to acknowledge and learn about all of our full histories. What does it mean to provide resources according to need? It means that we have to, first of all, recognize that there are differences in power and resources between us, and that some of us may have to wait for a cycle or two while the neediest get what they need. I want to close by recognizing that public health is built on a foundation of commitment to achieving social justice. So as we engage on this, this is not something that I can do as your president alone. This is something that all of us have a part in doing. In fact, if you wait for me to do something, if you wait for me to lead by myself a national campaign against racism, we will fail. Don't let me fail. Because if we fail in this, then it will set us all the way back. We will be two steps back from where we are today. So I encourage all of us to engage in this effort. We have the power to do this. We are going to have the tools to do this. Please, let's go. Thank you very much.